It's an Evan era for a 100-year-old conference going down. And we'll also talk a little bit about this fall camp. All that coming up next. Welcome, everyone, to Trojan Conquest Live 22. As Rick, if you guys were paying attention, said there's only 20 more days till we've kick off against San Jose State. Looking really forward to all the trash talking to end, all this realignment stuff to get settled, and USC to show what it can do on the field. Special announcement. So that means we're 3 weeks away from our post-game show at Trojan. Well, the post-game USC show with Tony, Rick, and myself after every game this year. We want to get warmed up by introducing back to the show Tony Altimore. And Rick, guys, how you doing today?
Tony, good to see you. Tim, great to see you.
Well, it's that time again, you guys. It's that time of year. We're all getting ready to get started again. Miss you, Tony.
Hey, miss you guys.
Missed you, Tim. Miss you, Tony. 2 weeks on vacation across the pond. It's great to be back for episode 22 with 20 days until kickoff at 5 p.m. in the Collie versus San Jose State. That's a Mike Garrett or a Darnell Bing. 20 days, Trojans getting jacked up. Let's hear it.
Right on.
So we will start out. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to start talking about the fact that there's a lot going on right now. USC has a week 0 game. That means that they're getting started a little bit earlier. So also their fall camp got started. We got 1 full week of fall camp in the books. Just going to run through some of the news and notes and quotes from this week. Rick, what are you hearing out there from the fall camp?
Well, as you mentioned, the fall camp's happening. I believe there's a scrimmage this afternoon. We'll get more information on that. One of the things that stands out, there's a lot of quotes out there, but the linebacker coach, Roy Manning, the rush end coach, had mentioned that in the 14 years of coaching, this is the most depth that he's had in his room. And that could be said for a lot of the different coaches as we go through. You look at all the different rooms on offense and defense. There is a lot of talent that's out there. And the great thing about SC, and we'll get into it, is I love what they've done with their roster management in terms of now this is the second year. They turned over players to the transfer portal. They acquired players to the transfer portal. They've got continuity with the coaching staff. There's development going on. So you have a lot of competition for starting, for backups, and for depth pieces. And it's the chance right now to really show what they have in fall camp from all the hard work that they've done last year in the offseason conditioning program for a second year, picking up the playbook, and now there's a lot of competition going in every room. But that stood out to me with Roy Manning. 14 years, and this is the most depth he's had. When just think about it, a year and a half he comes in, and what did we have at the rush end position? What do you think?
That's the thing. I mean, the room got a little bit more stacked because I need to update my notes here. But they moved over. Anthony Lucas has begun some play over there at the rush end position. That's going to be interesting to see how that shapes itself out. Everyone's been thinking about the fact that room is going to be the one that's going to need to make a difference. We all know that if you give that quarterback too much time to be comfortable out there, it doesn't matter how good your secondary is, they're going to get picked apart. And I think that it's kind of, I heard Manning talk about it, that he's expecting some big things, that he was kind of a little bit disappointed with the play last year, but he does feel with his stacked room that they will be able to go a little bit deeper. So it'll be interesting to see, is Anthony Lucas over there just kind of testing the waters? Like move him back, to the line, or is he going to stay out there the rest of the season? I know we're all excited to see guys like Solomon Byrd from last year. We'll see what Jamil Muhammad can do coming in. It's going to be an interesting position, but I'm really excited, especially later on. We're going to talk a little more about this idea. Everyone goes, well, USC sucks, their defense is terrible, etc. My favorite one is that, that we don't care about defense. The defense is going to get a hell of a lot better. And the reason why is you'll see later on, we're going to talk about depth and versatility, not just the depth on the team, but also a lot of versatile players who can play many positions. And the coaches have been talking about that. What else do you see, Rick?
Again, on the defensive side, Brian Odom, linebacker coach, has talked about Tackett Curtis. I know Tackett Curtis was real popular amongst Trojans, the freshman linebacker from Manny, Louisiana. And that he's coming in on a mission. He expects to get playing time, in my opinion. And so Brian Ohm was talking about this guy. He's not concerned about the block. He's looking for the ball. So this guy is showing technique, shedding blockers. He's heat-seeking missile. He's going right after that ball. He's got skills that are a different level than what Coach Odom is used to seeing from a freshman. And I love the way the schedule is going to play out because the first 6 games are going to be the easier opponents. Let's say the more manageable part of the schedule. And you're going to see Tackett Curtis getting reps. It's bottom line. He's not – obviously, they haven't listed who the starters are, but let's not kid ourselves. This kid's going to find playing time. And if you're going to find playing time at the beginning of the year, the schedule is going to allow it. So love to see what's happening there. There's another player that's going to get some playing time too, and he's complementary in that he's different in terms of his makeup, his athleticism, but Sam Green, freshman defensive player, rush end out of the DMV. He's compact. He's explosive. We saw him at the spring game, Tim. I mean, it was just amazing because that was the first time we saw him. But he's different athletically than, let's say, an Anthony Lucas, a Romello Height. And so that's going to be a curveball that Grinch and Manning can go ahead and throw at the offense. They're going to have to account for. And that's something that you're going to see this year. And that stood out to me. Tony, what have you heard about from fall camp that's kind of stood out with you?
Just overall the expected improvement on defense. I mean, that's the number one thing that I wanted to see was actually better defensive player. I mean, one of the things, and we talked about this ad nauseum last year, 2 years ago, our bad defense was nowhere near in position to make tackles. Last year, they were in position, missed a lot of tackles, but we're actually very much improved. This year, we've got, I think, better players. We've got improvements to the system. The coaches know they're on the hot seat on this. And so I've really been excited to hear about the good news of the progress on defense. And I'm really also excited to see what we're getting brought to the table with Kingsbury. I saw a great interview with Miller Moss the other day talking about working with Kingsbury and how great that's been for him. So I'm really, Miller's just awesome person and really smart and just a great guy. So in addition to being a great quarterback, so I'm hoping that we do get an opportunity to see him much more this season as well. Like Caleb takes some relaxation.
Yeah. Well, the one thing, the running joke Rick and I have been saying is, the offense, we're good with the offense. We really need to see our big move here is going to be on defense. And I do like the fact that you're reminding everyone out there and myself as well, guys like Sam Green, but you could not miss another freshman, Braylon Shelby, you guys. These are the kind of bodies we have not seen on our defensive line from freshmen in quite a while. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see them, but you just look at any of the practice reports you're going to see from the usual, the 247s or the on-3 guys. They'll do a great job of getting pictures up for you guys to see. These guys are showing just how big Braylon Shelby is, and it's not an exaggeration. And they're getting bigger too. Because a lot of the story we've been hearing, and we were told by some fan base, someone can remind me in the chat, that our strength and conditioning coach is a fraud and that all of our linemen are going to get smaller, when in reality, across the board, our line has been getting not only larger, but stronger, getting personal best in the weight room, just really throwing up the iron. And this kid right here, he looks like, I don't know, Rick, he looks like he's a guy that's been in the program for at least 3 years already. You got a chance to look at some of those pictures?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing because he was working out prior to coming out here, and he looks totally different than he did a year ago when he was a recruit. And so it's fantastic because these guys are hungry. He committed to USC because there was an opportunity, and he's taking advantage of it, and he's going to get himself in the mix. I mean, that's without a doubt. Again, another component to the rush end and is creating competition. And that's the great thing about fall camp. So I'm excited to see what Braylon Shelby can do. Guy's tall, he's athletic. and he's very, very, very quick, twitchy, and he wants to play. So we're going to get to see, Braylon Shelby. That's a great example of, when you're a freshman, it's kind of hard to get out here, but it's not really expected to play unless you're maybe a running back or a wide receiver, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So that shows the increased level of player that not only recruiting at the high school level, but we're getting the transfer portal.
Yeah, John. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to be the case. As great as Tackett is, USC already has some really good linebackers coming in. Mason Cobb, coming over from Oklahoma State, was an all-conference performer there. And what has he shown throughout spring camp, representing USC at media days, as well as just everyone. He said he got there, and the most important thing, what he wanted to prove is he just wanted to earn the respect of his team. And it looks like, for all accounts, that he's done that. The kid's mature beyond his years. He's a great tackler. Had near 100 tackles last year. He's going to anchor that line. So far, USC has gotten through spring practice, I wouldn't say unscathed, but according to Riley, and again, take it. I love Coach Riley, but take for what it's worth. As far as the injuries coming out, or actually any coaches these days, you're not getting the full story. But it appears they've come out unscathed. Nobody actually having any long-term damage. But at that linebacker position, it is stacked. And with Rajon Davis, he has, I guess, a small injury, a soft tissue injury, I think. Is that what it was called? I'm not sure. I can't remember, getting some of them mixed up. But I know that he was out, and that gave Tackett Curtis probably important reps that might have brought him along a little better. But at that position, they're very deep at that Mike linebacker position. I'm really excited. I do think across the board, the front seven, the tackling is going to be much better. And that Mike position, obviously, as we know, everyone's follows football, is an integral part to that. And I think they're going to do a great job up front. Anything to add?
I've got one last thing to add, and that it's some of the injured players that didn't play last year. And when you have a player, and this is Bryson Shaw, he's the safety, the transfer from Ohio State. They had asked him about Zion Branch and what his thoughts on Zion Branch and Christian Pierce. Zion Branch was hurt last year, the safety out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. And then Christian Pierce, the freshman safety out of Rancho Cucamonga. He had great things to say about both, that the secondary is set for the future. This is going to be Bryson Shaw's last year. But just the level in the room with the competition. Again, this is a different position. This is the secondary. So we talked about linebacker. We talked about rush end. Now here's the secondary where, Bryson Shaw is a great player out of Ohio State, transfer from Ohio State. And for him to be complimenting these players, he doesn't need to, but he sees the talent that Zion Branch is going to bring. Guy's excited, right? Because anything they can add to your room and the competition, because all these guys are unselfish. They have a team goal. They believe in it. They're doubted. They've heard, they've read all offseason about this defense, and they've got a chip on their shoulder. And I think part of that came out during the week as it relates to the offensive line. Josh Henson was not happy with the effort. Basically, he was saying the defensive line was pushing them around. And he had to get on a couple players. He got on freshman Elijah Page. And apparently after he got on him, he had a couple of his best reps. But the effort wasn't there. And that tells you that the defense wants to send a message. And the offense better be ready. Yeah.
I want to bring attention to this as well. Someone's still kind of talking about the linebacker play. Curse, like how poor man's. So if you're talking about Matt Grudegood, you guys, he's talking about in I think 2004, he was a consensus All-American. I mean, so if we could have a poor man's consensus All-American as a freshman, hey, I'm going to take that all day long. And I would say that as great as Matt was from modern day, had a great career at USC, won national championships, again, consensus All-American. He wasn't as big as Tackett. So again, to call him a poor man's, why don't we let this guy get maybe 1 year under his belt before we start making comparisons and calling a poor man's anything? I'm not sure exactly where that comes. Maybe it's some sour grapes. I'm not sure. So, okay. So talking about other positions, someone brought up the offensive line, Rick. Where was that? They said they're worried about, so he said, listening to you guys, analyze O-line play. Sure, I'm wrong, but O-line unit is my biggest worry heading into 23. I'm not sure why. Rick, do you have any concerns about the O-line?
Actually, I don't. I'm very confident about the O-line. There is depth there. And they had the transfer from Florida, Michael Tarquin. He was practicing during the spring on the left side, left tackle. And they had returning Jonah Monheim on the right side. And now in the fall, they switched them, like you just said, Tim. So Josh Henson's smart. He's providing versatility. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is because injuries do happen. And I think it's smart. He's going to be able to give confidence to both guys. Should something go down, hey, no problem, plug and play. We can go ahead and play from left to right, and they can switch. Genio Quinones, he's I believe a redshirt senior, hasn't had a lot of reps, hasn't played a lot, but he's battling right now Emmanuel Pregnon for one of the guard positions. I believe it's the left guard position. And Emmanuel Pregnon during the week started getting first team reps. But they're also saying that they're very confident with Quinones being a backup center. In fact, there's a few backup centers. And this tells you about the depth. Lincoln Riley actually called out Killian O'Connor. He's a walk-on from Ladera Ranch, Rancho Santa Margarita. And if you don't know that school, Trojans, maybe who are out of Southern California, they're part of the Trinity League. That's a school that Carson Palmer went to. So they compete with Bosco, Mater Dei, Orange Lutheran, Servite, and J. Sarah, the best league in the country. So if you're a walk-on and there's confidence that he could be the backup to Justin Dedich, that tells you what's going on in the room. And, you got Pregnon in there. You got Jared Kingston, also going to be playing the guard position to transfer from Washington State. And you've got Mason Murphy, and you got Cooper Lovelace. There's a lot of guys playing a lot of different roles. And then you got a couple of freshmen that have been getting reps. Alani Noah at the guard position. That guy's a road grader out of Grand High School up in Sacramento. And then you also have, like I mentioned earlier, Elijah Page. He's from Pinnacle High School out of Arizona. And hey, if Josh Henson's getting on him, if the coach has to get on you, that's a good thing because he's recognizing you. If he doesn't speak to you or even contact you, then you got problems. But they see talent in this kid. Not that he's going to necessarily get reps or start. I'm not saying that at all. But there might be an opportunity where, hey, they're going to need this kid. So, again, freshmen, not many freshmen play on the offensive line, but there's a lot of depth there on the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm not a position, like I've gone on record a couple of times now saying that it got a little better with Clay McGuire actually in Helton's last year. It was probably our strongest unit. Last year, it was strength on the team for sure. Obviously losing a lot of reps with Voorhees leaving and Nealon leaving. But I think that if you watch these, again, I was watching the 247 had some really good videos of them on the sled. And you watch these guys going 3 deep. These guys are huge. And you watch them coming out as well. They're coming out to go to practice. These are not some of the lines we're used to seeing. Even our freshmen look massive. So if there's a concern, it's definitely not on the offensive line. So you could probably stop worrying about that one. Okay, well, let's talk about that. You kind of teased it a little bit, depth and versatility. So these are reasons why we see a lot of improvement going on to the season. Someone made a comment about Grinch. I'm so sorry. I kind of lost it. I'm not really into the Grinch comments anymore. My whole stance on this is Grinch has brought in all these players, his brand new front seven, a deep secondary that probably is definitely in the Pac-12, if not in the rest of college football. Let's see what he can do with his talent. I know with Brown brought in as an analyst, I'm sure there's a lot going on in that secondary as well. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. Let's put the Grinch comments away. We're going to probably look at that. But the first 5 games isn't going to tell us a lot. But I do think that conversation will be one for the offseason. And I got to be honest with you, I honestly think he's putting together and we should be okay. So any thoughts on Grinch, panel?
Well, Grinch he's a popular guy to go ahead and bash. I mean, make Grinch your piñata. That's okay. But really, it's about having players and talent activated roster management. And USC has done that. And they have the coaching and development. And that's the one thing. I mean, the Trojans out there that they know, if you take a look at the team in Clay Helton's next to last year. Just look at COVID and what our team was like. Okay, and then you look in 2021, he gets fired. Riley comes in, and look at last year, the first year. Okay, and what they did with that roster is pretty phenomenal when you look back. And he said it at the time, like, Riley, no disrespect, this is probably going to be the least talented roster he'll have when he's at USC. And then he goes out and does what he does in the transfer portal and then with the 2023 class. And you see them in the off-season training program. You see them in spring camp and now in fall camp. And there's a lot to like about this team. And I get it. Go ahead and bash Grinch. But if you don't have the athletes, the athleticism, the depth, doesn't matter who you're going to be. You're gonna. The margins are thin. Did anybody see the World Cup, Women's World Cup? That's how thin the margins are. They lost by a millimeter. Before anybody who sees this or listens, is he really bringing up women's soccer compared to USC football? I'm talking about roster management. I'm talking about margins for error. Okay, last year's team, it showed as the season wore on. The margins were very thin, and we got blown out of that Tulane game in the Cotton Bowl at the very end because we just didn't have the depth, and we wore out against Utah in the championship game. I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you what happened. So, Tony, what do you think is going to happen this year in terms of the depth in the roster management, the talent acquisition that we have?
So it's getting a lot better. It's really a lot of that really depends. I hate to say it sounds stupid to say and cliche to say, but a lot of it depends on luck. Are you going to get hit? You can have, remember when we lost 2 quarterbacks in one game. So, unlike Alabama or Georgia, we don't have unlimited depth, but I think we're a lot better than we were last year. Yeah. And so I think we're in a better position, but if the dice roll the wrong way, we are still rebuilding. We're not all the way there yet, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, everyone wants everything right away. This is still really, last year was his first full recruiting class for Riley and his team. I had some Oklahoma fan, absolutely absurd, talk about how poor the high school recruiting class, Riley's first recruiting class, the one he had, less than a month for, guys, to get together. And they said, well, you have it until February. No. Anyone's following sports realizes that by December signing period is when the majority of your top players have already assigned. So, yes, you have some remaining until February. And in the case of Deuce Robinson, there's some guys that hold out to the very end, right? But in general, he's had one full recruiting class, and I don't know anyone here in Troy that's unhappy with the recruiting class he has had. You guys, just really quickly, I had an opportunity. A lot of you guys out there, I'm not sure if you know this, but we're heading over to the Big Ten. And the Big Ten is a conference that has a different culture, a different brand of football, and really a whole different group of players in it. I've been really lucky to meet a guy named Big Ten Ted, and his channel, if you guys have had a chance to check it out, he's doing some great stuff over there. I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the chat, but this time we're going to kind of skip. If you guys don't mind, we're going to bring him in really quickly and hear his thoughts on USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington joining the Big Ten. Big Ten Ted, thank you so much on short notice. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. About yourself? Did anything happen in West Coast football this week?
No,
I was on vacation, so I wasn't able to.
It was very quiet.
Absolutely nothing, right? Well, I'm curious because
they still didn't sign a media deal, if that's what you're wondering.
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely nothing happened in Pac-12 country. But Tim, I'm going to have you on my live show on Tuesday night. I'm very curious to see what USC fans are thinking at this point in time with the additions of Oregon and Washington, because there was a kind of a thought that said USC and UCLA, but those two West Coast schools really wanted the West Coast and the recruiting along with the Big Ten kind of all to themselves. And then Oregon and Washington now come in. What's the feeling of USC fans? I'm really excited. We can dive into it a little bit now. of course. But I'm very curious to see how that dynamic is going to play out. USC is going to be just fine. Obviously, you guys were just talking about recruiting. Yeah, you're doing okay. You're doing even more than okay right now. But I'm just very curious to see now with those additions in the Pacific Northwest, how does that change the dynamic and maybe the competition, really in terms of recruiting, kind of going down the pike here in the next few years?
I can answer your question, I think, on how a lot of them feel. If it was possible to pull a muscle from rolling your eyes, there'd be a lot of pulled muscle. I don't think that I think that they've been a little bit just annoyed with a lot of. I mean, so USC and Oregon are very like institutionally different, right? Like USC, we really get panicky over rumors that we might change a stripe on one of our sleeves, and like we're not cool with that. Whereas, Oregon, you'll get cirrhosis of the eye if you look too close on their uniform. So it's just culturally very different. I think USC people are ready to be done with them. I think USC people generally that I've talked to seem actually kind of happy about don't mind Washington. And a lot of them, and somebody else worded it best, and I've sort of stolen this. I think a lot of the feeling was that USC fans were more okay with holding their nose and swallowing up Oregon if they could also have Stanford, Cal, and Washington.
Right. Yeah.
So like if you said, okay, USC, you can have Stanford and Cal, and the price of that is you got to bring Oregon too, I think they would be more okay with it. I think the idea they're like, really, could we have just left them to the Mountain West if that was an option? In general, I think that, there's a sort of a narrative among Oregon fans that USC fans are like angry about it. It's more of like a sigh and an eye roll than like actual anger. But I think if you did say to them, you know what, we'll take Cal and Stanford, and Cal and Stanford would come for like, you could negotiate them down to a dime or maybe a nickel if you want to be tough. I think they'd be more okay with it. What do you guys think?
Well, I just want to remember, thank you, George Kliavkoff. One, you kind of left 4 teams hanging, right? But also you ruined my best joke I've had for running joke for the past 6 months. I've been calling Oregon AA Eugene for like forever because they were going to be our farm system. I was looking forward to it. But all joking aside, no, it's great. We were talking about the history of this conference, and in a way, we are losing a lot of magic with some of these teams that maybe be left behind. But there's also a lot of the Pac-12 moving forward. If there is, so currently you have the 4 of us moving forward. There's talk again, possibly of Stanford, Cal, combination of Stanford or Cal, moving on to the Big Ten. So I think this is a great thing. It was hard initially for me to say goodbye to the conference because there's a lot of, my entire life we've been in the Pac-12, and it's a lot of bad blood, a lot of good blood, a lot of great games, a lot of rivalries. And I was still getting my head around the idea that I get to play Ohio State or Michigan every single year. And that to me was just like really made this thing happen, and not to mention all the other schools, Wisconsin and Penn State, et cetera, as well. But overall, the only thing I'm really upset about them coming, it's not the recruiting, because the recruiting, we all know, everyone on this panel, everyone in the chat who's been following football for more than just 5 years knows that when USC has things right, we recruit with anybody. Oregon, we're not going to worry about recruiting against Oregon when we're rolling, and the way that I see the design and the implementation of what Lincoln Riley's doing here at USC, there should be absolutely, if we're worried about losing recruits to Oregon, then maybe this isn't the coach and team that I think it was going to be. So I'm sorry, Oregon fans. You can take that however you want. We're really good at being arrogant here at USC. That's fine. It's just because we're better than you. So that's just the way it is. Rick, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Big Ten Ted, welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. I'll give you my take here. A year ago, USC saw the iceberg that Larry Scott's Titanic Pac-12 was going towards. And so we bailed because it wasn't financially feasible, and we were going to hit the iceberg. George Kliavkoff steered it for 13 months going towards that iceberg. And then at Pac-12 Media Days on Friday the 21st,
hit it.
Colorado AD Rick George bailed because he saw the iceberg too. And then on the following Wednesday, when Colorado left, the Pac-12 Titanic officially hit that iceberg. And so 9 days later, in epic proportions that you've never seen before, 5 Pac-12 teams hit the transfer portal. Okay? 3 of them went to the Big 12, and the Big 10, they went shopping. They got discount, 50%. Why wouldn't you take Oregon and Washington for 50%? Hey, they needed a life raft. There was no conditions. Take us. And you know what? That's just good business. And then you had 3 teams go to the Big 12. So they went to the step-down conference. And, that's how it is in a nutshell. The Pac-12 just made a record. They lost the 6-pack in 9 days.
And I also have to thank Utah. Thanks a lot for going to the Big 12, because now you ruined my second favorite joke of the past couple of months. I really can't call it the island of misfit toys anymore. Now, technically, I guess because you didn't get in the Big 10 or to the SEC, I guess that does make your program, which I have all the respect in the world for, and I think you're going to roll the Big 12. I don't know if you guys seen it, but there's a great video out there on Twitter somewhere where I don't know what is it, Happy Gilmore. I don't really watch the Sandler movies, but it's a dodgeball scene, and some kid throws the ball at him, and he has like a Utah on him, and then he's just pegging all of, like, the Texas Tech kids and all of the Oklahoma State fans. It is a beautiful video. I see that with the Utes, but now you've ruined my joke about the Island Misfits toys. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to put you on that island too, because you didn't make it. Although I respect you.
There can be like one nice toy in the Island of Misfit Toys because it doesn't fit with the others. It's too nice.
That one could be actually picked up by one of the children at some point.
Yeah, it's the one toy that the children might want to play with.
Oh, gotcha. All right, I made enough enemies.
Well, and by the way, the Big 12, they're already making enemies. Ray Anderson, how does he still have a job? And what kind of NCAA sanctions are coming to them? Like, started making fun of Morgantown. By the way, West Virginia, if you look at almost any football metric of history, West Virginia is the #1 football history in the Big 12. And Ray Anderson's like making fun of them. Like, what the hell? I mean, they are going to find that they thought that they like had their little like compadres. And I think they're going to find that the PAC schools were never going to fit really well into the Big 12. And they may, the old saying, be careful what you wish for, it just might come true.
And before I ask you really quick, Ted, your views, I know, give us the short. We don't want to ruin your show by giving away too much here, but maybe just a little bit snapshot. I want to thank Slap Happy. Thank you again. One of the biggest contributors, been here through all of our shows for the longest time. Really, really great viewer. Thank you so much for the $3 super chat. And we really, well, Mark really appreciates the donation. And then really quickly, also, Doge Dave, I'm not sure if you've heard of Washington State. They're up in the Palouse. They're known to have a little bit of snow and cold once in a while. There's also other schools called Colorado. Sometimes they have a little bit of snow and they're pretty cold as well. Utah. Washington, or Oregon State. These are all these. It's not exactly. We're not all playing in Southern California, so USC has been able to go into the cold play.
Washington plays games in something called an atmospheric river. I still don't entirely know what that is, but Washington plays in them. There's a reason those seats are covered.
So, Ted, what do you think? What do you think about Oregon? Do you think Oregon will be a challenge for USC? What do you see? How do you think USC's place changing now that Oregon and Washington? And by the way, we're not even talking about Washington. DeBoer's got to turn around now as well. We're kind of looking over them. I know we're looking at the recruiting angle of this, but what do you think the issue is going to be for USC, just pertaining just to USC with them joining?
I'm glad you mentioned when you were talking about recruiting before, you're not worried about Oregon, when USC is rolling, because I think some people have brought up in the past, maybe Oregon was able to go into SoCal, maybe when USC was down a little bit in terms of recruiting. So I'm glad you touched on when USC is rolling. When you got Pete Carroll and you kind of go back a little bit, even further than that, when USC is as good as they are, ain't nobody going into SoCal and grabbing the top kids. Like, that's just that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree, Ted. When we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, that's what's going to happen for USC. They're going to take care of their own backyard, and not just the Oregons. I mean, we're talking about the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the Georgias, the Ohio States. It's good. We're going to cut the spigot. Now, even Pete Carroll didn't get everybody. I mean, DeAnthony Thomas went up to Eugene. So you're not going to get all of the guys. but they tend to get most of the guys. And yeah, I'll be interested to see what it looks like when we're rolling, because even outside of Pete Carroll, you know, so those Kiffin recruiting classes, etc., have been really, really strong. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
I got a question for Big Ten Ted. Your perception, Ted, how long have you been watching Pac-12 football or college football?
I have been watching college football for the better part of 20 years. It's been my favorite sport forever. And I watch Saturday football. I don't watch Sunday football. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. So you've been watching enough college football when the Pac-10 became the Pac-12 and added Utah and Colorado.
Yep.
Okay. And there was a lot of dysfunction within USC, from the president on down to the athletic director of the department, coaching. And so there's a perception. I want to get your perception. Who were the best teams during this Pac-12, the last 11 years of the Pac-12? Who were the best teams?
In the Pac-12 conference you're talking about, right?
Yes.
The last handful of years, I think you got to throw Utah in there, like what they've been able to do. As of late, USC is kind of an interesting one because, let's see, 10 years ago would have been 2013. You're looking kind of at the back half of kind of when they were good.
I'm looking from 2012 to last year. That's 11 years.
Yeah, 2012. Let's see. I think you got to throw Oregon in there a little bit. Washington made a college football playoff appearance, so I think by default you got to throw them in there. Although they've been a little bit kind of up and down. You know, they haven't had the consistency maybe at the top of the league as well. But you know, Oregon's in there as well. You guys would probably know better than I would. I can't exactly remember when the David Shaw Stanford years were good. I want to say it was late 2010s. In there at some point. Yeah. I can't remember exactly the years when they beat some Big Ten teams in the Rose Bowl, if I remember correctly. I think they beat Michigan State, if my memory serves me correctly. So that's, like I said, it's not like I said, Big Ten I'm all about that. I grew up in the Midwest. So it's not my premier conference, I should say, that I follow, but I'd go with Utah. I'd go with Washington. I'd probably go with Oregon. Then you throw in occasionally Washington State wins 10 games and something like that. So.
I'll share these numbers with you.
All right, let's share it.
So in 11 years, and this is arguably one of USC's worst decades. I don't think I'm saying anything that anybody would disagree with. There was that Rose Bowl win in 2017. But if you take a look at the number of total wins, this includes conference out of conference. Oregon leads with 101 wins. Second place, Washington with 89. Tied for third, USC and Utah with 88. Fifth place, Stanford, 84. So as bad as USC was or is, this year we have a chance of going ahead of Washington and finishing second in the 12 years of the Pac-12. USC's floor is very high. When they have their ceiling, it's higher than most, and that's the misperception. You take the average Pac-12 fan would say that USC sucks. Well, hey, our sucking is not too bad.
Can I throw one more thing in, Dad, for you to respond to that? I hate when I can't give someone the credit. Someone did the numbers for it, but I just looked recently at a graphic, and they had, if you add the teams in Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC into the Big Ten, they did. Since 2002, who has the most wins? USC placed second behind Ohio State. Now, there was a gap there, but that USC was second among the Big Ten, which I found fascinating, because you guys got to remember, we were on probation and we were on sanctions for the years, and it wasn't just a couple of years for the sanction years, the 3 years for sanction years. That lagged on, obviously, and then we decided to self-sanction with Helton. So when you look at one of our worst decades ever, we still finished second. You guys, everyone trashed USC for the past 10 years. We would have finished second in wins overall over the past 20 years in the Big Ten. Let that soak in.
We had 30 lost scholarships tied behind our back, and we still have a chance to be the second best team in the Pac-12 history after it goes night-night after this year.
Here's the thing I will say about, I interact obviously with a lot of Big Ten fans, or especially the fans, the Midwestern powerhouses, the Ohio States, the Michigans, even though Penn State's not really Midwest, but you get the general idea, the core of the Big Ten footprint. They look upon USC, and when they're coming in, they say, well, we're gonna ram it down their throat. We're gonna be physical. We're gonna play Big Ten football. They're gonna come in and they're gonna do fine. USC, it might take them a year. It might take them 2 years. Maybe they'll do it right away. Because after Caleb Williams goes in, what is that? Malachi Nelson is a great quarterback that might come in and kind of do some things. A 5-star guy. It might take him maybe a year or two to develop. Make no mistake about it. USC is going to be a tier 1 team, and USC is going to compete with your Michigans, with your Ohio States. They're already doing it on the recruiting trail. And that's, of course, that's the lifeblood of the sport, is being able to bring in talent, especially in today's day and age, keep the talent here. And you got one of the best coaches in the game. Like, what Lincoln Riley has been able to do is spectacular, right? And like, they have it all set up for success at USC, and the recruiting is going to take another step up. Of course, financials are going to take a new step up. Having those resources is so big. Look, I grew up in Wisconsin. I live in Minnesota. It's a beautiful night here in Minnesota. I'm a Midwestern guy through and through, but I can't deny when, like Tim, like you said before, when USC is rolling, there is no denying with their recruiting base. Like, you look at the top recruiting bases, like an 80-mile radius or so in the country. It's Los Angeles. It's probably Southern. It's probably Miami area. Then I think Houston or Dallas Fort Worth is kind of what are the areas that you really think of. When USC is rolling, it's going to be tough. Like, it's going to be tough. I'm not going to pull off the Scott Frost line and say, well, the Big Ten is going to have to adjust to us, but there's going to have to be some adjusting both ways. And, if I'm a Michigan fan, if I'm an Ohio State fan, especially Michigan and Ohio State, they've had a stranglehold on the league for the better part of a decade, even going further back than that. At Penn State, teams like that. With USC coming in, you're not scared. Obviously, it's not a term that I don't think you want to use right now, but that is a really good core one. When you compare the Big Ten to the SEC, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, man, that's as good as it gets. I am so pumped to see what USC can do in this conference. Tim, you mentioned the great matchups before. Michigan and USC going on the field, like in the Big House. I can't wait to see that happen. I can't wait to see, Wisconsin, the team that I grew up watching play in Rose Bowls in the late 90s, going down to the Coliseum and playing in that type of environment. USC is going to do – they're going to do just fine. They're going to do just fine. And I think they might even take a step up into where they're going from here. So, Big Ten fans, I know you're very proud of your league, and I'm very proud of the league. Been watching Big Ten football since the late 90s and the early 2000s. But I said it in a quick YouTube short that I posted the other day. The times they are changing. This is a new age of college football in many different ways. NIL, transfer portal, conference realignment, and teams moving leagues. USC is going to be right there. I really believe that in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. And listen, I just called you last minute, say, hey man, can you come on our show? You said, hey man, can you come on my show? I really appreciate you. I've been following you guys. I've been watching Big Ten, Ted, for a long time now. I've learned, I want to be ready for the Big Ten. And I think I know the Big Ten, but you know what? We don't know the Big Ten like the Big Ten does. And if you're on the Voice of College Football, you're talking to our Big Ten guys. You got Mike, you got is Buckeye Mike? No, he's not doing anything. You have John for the Michigan show. You got Mark Rogers, the Voice of College Football, who knows everything, but he sure as hell also knows the Buckeyes probably better than anyone I know. You have a lot of stories, but if you also need someone else to check out, you got to go over to his channel. Absolutely top-notch, entertaining. He talks about not just the Big Ten, but also how the rest of the country affects the Big Ten and the storylines as they line up for the Big Ten. So if you're a Big Ten fan, by the way, Trojans out there, you're kind of a big fan now too. So if you really want to get the gist on what's going on, the bigger picture, as well as the team analysis, you got it here at the Voice of College Football. But also, man, my buddy here, he's got all this stuff. And I'm going to drop it one more time here. Please go check out his channel. Obviously not right now, thank you. But, at some point, go check it out. And I know you will be excited. Ted, one more time? So it's going to be Tuesday night?
Tuesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. What is that? 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So, yeah, it should be really fun. I'm really interested to talk. We're going to talk more. We kind of teased it a little bit, kind of laid the groundwork. But I really want to dive into what USC is kind of feeling and how Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA, how those West Coast 4 are really going to stack up with the current 14 teams in the Big Ten. I cannot wait for 2024. Let me just put
and you guys, Mark and John and all the Big Ten guys out here, you guys got to hook up with Big Ten Ted. You guys got to do a great show together. I hope you guys get that opportunity. Ted, thank you so much. Again, it was last second. I really appreciate you popping in. Anything else you want to share with us before you head out?
I appreciate coming on tonight at Big Ten Ted on Twitter. You guys do a great job here. Of course, the entire Voice of College Football networks do a fantastic job as well. Mark did a lot of coverage of Big Ten Media Days. That was really insightful as well. That Monday Night Live show is very insightful as well, very engaging with the fans on Monday night. So we'll see everybody Tuesday night, 9:00 Eastern. Should be a fun discussion. Really looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on, Tim. Fight on, right?
Anytime. Take it easy.
It's Ed.
So you guys, I guess what we could move into now is going to hop back. We were talking about the news, but let's go back to the topic we had here as far as the depth and versatility goes. So this is a big part of that, of the defense that we were talking about. I'll give you my piece on it. So Christian Roland-Wallace and I can still say this, coming over from single A Tucson with a lot of experience at cornerback, but what really caught me from notes and stuff that Riley said is this is a guy that could play, basically all three levels of the secondary. This is a guy that you slot in, could play the cornerback position, or maybe you slide to a nickel position, or maybe if you're really going pass heavy, you can have him as a dime linebacker. And then he also, what kind of threw me, I saw all that could possibly happen, but he also said pushing for safety play as well, which to me was a bit interesting because back there as safety, it seems like a really logjam position. Rick, do you want to talk about Christian Roland-Wallace or maybe someone else you see that can, it's like almost like a Swiss Army knife that's going to be able to work at a lot of different levels in the defense?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point with Christian Roland-Wallace, and that's a great example. He could play any of the 5 positions. You got Fegans, the transfer from Alabama. You got Christian Pierce, who really is a freshman and not really expected to play, but this guy is going to force himself in the rotation. So they're looking to play the 5 best defensive back players all at once. Whoever the 5 best are, they're going to mix and mash and put them on the field. So that's Damani Jackson, Zion Branch, Christian Roland-Wallace. Another guy that showed out the spring game, Jacoby Covington, from transfer from Washington. And, you've got Kalen Bullock. You got Sierra Wright. I mean, there's just a load of riches back there. And it's a great time to put them in different game situations in different positions because, as we know, the season is long. There's going to be injuries. It's just part of the game. And so there's not going to be a hesitation. In the middle of a game, a player might have to come out and they're going to have somebody step up in the position that maybe that they weren't playing that in the first half, but they're going to go in there because they're used to playing the nickel. Maybe they move over from safety to the nickel. I forgot Bryson Shaw as well. That's just it. There's so many players this year that you're forgetting players, and that's versatility. Now, that's not just in one room. That's in arguably every room on the USC team this year. And I love it because, the easiest thing to do is to say that Grinch sucks and you guys aren't going to be great. I love it. Just bring it because, that just shows how much you know and you don't know. Okay. And it's going to be a wonderful thing to see the depth. And there's the secondary right there. And notice, we really don't even talk about the offense because the offense is so freaking sick that it's going to be a beautiful thing. Tony? Anything to add on the versatility, what you're seeing?
No, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So,
I mean, there's a lot. There are still a lot of questions, but what I love is that these are questions in our normal realm of USC world. Like I very much feel that we are back where we need to be, and that is going to be incredibly valuable. Like I can't wait. I'm so excited. I want the season to start now.
And here's the key thing too, that this is setting up for next year. We had, great job, Tim, on last minute getting Big Ten Ted in here.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, and it's funny because in some of the Trojans out there, if you remember that 2004 Rose Bowl, prior to that game where SC won 28-14 and won a national championship that year, their first national championship, the AP national championship. Remember that week leading up to the Rose Bowl, we were told how physical Michigan was and how they're going to block us off the ball. And we sacked John Navarre, I think, 6 times in that game.
Yeah.
And we made them look slow, plodding. They couldn't handle the speed. They could not handle the speed. And yes, the apologists for the Big Ten and Michigan will say, well, hey, the Rose Bowl is in your backyard. You had a week to be there. Come on. The partnership had happened since World War II. Get over yourselves. All right. Yes. And now the point's going to be, well, hey, you're going to be playing every game in the Big Ten and it's physical. Yes, we get that. Right. But the great thing about what is happening at USC right now is you have competition with like 2 guys, 3 guys for starting spots. And you have the development happening because you have good recruiting, transfer portal, and you have, I call them A, B, and C. A is a starter, or B can be a starter and elevate himself. A C is a freshman and developmental player. But you got guys that are targeted as C players that have a chance to get in the B and A level. So there's so much depth that it's great moving forward as we go into the Big Ten.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about who has the best wide receiver room in America, and it goes back and forth between Ohio State and USC all the time. But here's what I'm going to say: not only that, Sagar, you have a good point. 8 receivers who can start it. We have guys like Gary Bryant Jr. that went up to Oregon. He'll be starting. We got guys like CJ Williams that Ted could have told us that he's going to Wisconsin. He'll be starting, and we lost.
JJ the third, John Jackson.
Yeah. John Jackson III. He'll be at Nevada. We'll see him. He'll be starting at Nevada, and then we had Ford go across town to UCLA. He'll be starting. So the depth we have, especially at wide receiver, I think we know that from a USC team is so deep that it's almost. And again, I really hope, I can't remember who asked a question about the offensive line, but I think you're going to be really surprised at how they run the ball. It's gonna be pretty amazing just to watch the offense itself. But this year, I think we're going to see a lot of running play. Rick, we were talking earlier about the comment that Kyle McDonald made about the explosives in the running game. Do you want to just hit on that really quick?
Yeah, I mentioned that last year we had a lot of yards that went for over 10 yards, but we didn't have a lot of what they deem explosive plays over 20 yards. And I think that's going to be. I'm just assuming. There's a need, there's an opportunity to increase those 20-plus yard run explosive plays, as they like to call it. And guys that can do that, Marshawn Lloyd and the 2 freshmen.
Joyner, and Amarian Peterson. But I really think Joyner is going to be that guy that's just because of, his speed alone. And then we know that Raleigh Brown moved to the slot position, but I'm also going to see how they cat and mouse that, that on end arounds and maybe even motion them back into a running back position. It's going to be interesting how they play. I think with the speed they have, but when I heard that comment, I thought right away to the freshman getting on early, a guy like Joyner with his speed, his ability to break it at any moment. I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out. I've been giving a lot of. Oh, sorry, Rick.
I was just going to say there's just a different level of expectations in each room and by the coaches, and they're holding their players accountable. As you can see this last week, Josh Henson kind of going off on the offensive line play, how they were lethargic. It shouldn't take him to bust into a player to point things out on how you need to practice. And they're talking about being physical and moving players on the offensive line. Like you're physically going to move a player. Like Emmanuel Pregnon. That kid is, 6'3", or actually 6'5", like 320. So part of the key is working with your offensive line, having that attitude. The offensive line is going to maul and move players, and then they're going to open up that hole for a split second. And guess what? Kyle McDonald, he has expectations for running backs in terms of blocking, protecting the ball, knowing your playbook. He is a heck of a running back coach, and we are fortunate to get him from Utah. And so any running back that gets on the field, he's Kyle McDonald ready. So the combination between the offensive line play, the grit, determination, and the running game, we're going to see those explosive plays this year because we have the players back there. That's going to be something to look for, Trojans.
And you brought it up there, Rick. It's really what's going to limit freshmen getting onto the field is going to be the no blocky, no rocky thing that Travis Dye told us about. If they can get that blocking down, they can trust it back there to protect Caleb Williams. That's when these guys are really going to get their shots. And again, that's saying a lot because we don't, Jones has been shown to be an incredibly capable running back. We run Marshawn Lloyd. He didn't come over here to sit. So I think we have a great 1-2 right there with those guys. And then the forgotten man is Barlow. I can't wait to see him on goal line short position. I think that's going to be interesting to see how they utilize him. But there's no question those freshmen are going to get on the field at some point, and I'm really excited to see it. And since I was handing out a lot of kudos to everyone, please make sure you guys are checking out. Matt hasn't been able to come on for a while, but he will be coming back. He has done a great job over at Trojans Wire. He's still doing great things. I've been reading this week on everything covering the Oregon and Washington merger, as well as just everything from fall camp updates to recruiting. I went ahead and I dropped it in the chat. You guys make sure you're still going to check out Trojans Wire, which is still my first place to look for Trojan information. So you guys, that's about it. You guys, I have this up here. You got to look over there. You guys go ahead. If you have your phone, you can go ahead and use that QR code if you'd like to call into the show. Otherwise, I will drop it in the chat. If we can get a couple calls, we'll hang on for a little bit longer. Other than that, I think we're getting pretty close to wrapping it up. We did have a couple questions, though, so I was waiting for a call to come in. Let's look at this one. So we had... this is a quick one. Tony, why don't you go ahead and give him the answer to this one?
Miller Mott.
Number 2 quarterback. That is going to be Miller. I think it is going to be Miller, right? I think we all agree. He's got the experience. I think that Malachi's probably coming on really strong. If you guys saw that, I took some video right behind him. It was an amazing thing. I was like 5 feet behind them during the spring game recording video. And after you had Malachi drop and fumble a ball, they ruled a fumble. I thought it was incomplete. They ruled a fumble. You had Caleb Williams right there mentoring him, like literally doing like steps with him, showing what he should have done. And he's going to have that all year long, I'm pretty sure. As well as they got this guy called Cliff Kingsbury. He's going to be there as well, helping out. And then
not a bad personal tutor.
Yeah, mentored by him. And then, of course, then you're coached by this guy named Lincoln Riley, who's I also hear is pretty good with quarterbacks. So it will be Miller. I think it's Miller's time to shine. We're going to see a lot of Miller time early on here. I'm sure of it. There's in the beginning half our schedule sets up to where if this is a team we think they're going to be, there's going to be a lot of time for Miller to get some meaningful reps in the game. I'm sure they're going to work Malachi in there. But if Caleb were to go down, I think everyone here and most people agree that it's going to be Miller Moss. And then here we go. It's a great question. 66 Lucky Dude. Guys, what do you think will happen with Stanford recruits now that the PAC is in trouble? Stanford had some nice recruits from modern day. I think he's talking about, have someone help me out, quarterback. I'm blanking out on him. Quarterback from modern day.
Brown.
Yeah. They
have a bunch of really good recruits. Here's the thing about Stanford. I wouldn't trust them further than I can throw the tree. So, yeah. I mean, Stanford could go to the Big Ten and say, and literally, and I'm not exaggerating this. And by the way, I actually talked to the other day a guy who you guys have seen on the show who runs one of the Stanford sites, and there's a big push among Stanford's boosters that Stanford has all the money. Stanford does not actually need the Big Ten's money. And I'm not exaggerating this. They don't need the Big Ten's money. Stanford could go to the Big Ten for free. So if I were Stanford, that's what I would do. I mean, I don't know what they'll work out. I don't know what the Big Ten will say. I don't know how the issue is with Stanford's an Ivy Plus. Would they have to change that to go into the BTAA? There's a lot of questions there, but I would not count out Stanford miraculously showing up with us. That's not a prediction. It's just I wouldn't count it out.
Yeah. I sorry, go ahead, Rick.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was gonna say the same thing. And I think the big prize, even now, yes, it was good to get Washington and Oregon on sale, but I think that your headliner still is at Notre Dame. We all know it. I think that getting Stanford might be that little piece that might be necessary. I don't know though. The more I say that, I don't believe it, because really Stanford. I mean, Notre Dame's going to come if it works for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I don't think Notre Dame moves the needle on them, but I do think that it solidifies a lot for the Big Ten. It gives the Big Ten. I mean, the other thing with the Big Ten is they want presence. So having more, like, especially now that you've got Oregon and Washington, having more California games, have, for the schools and the presidents and the boosters and the fundraisers, better access into that Silicon Valley tech headquarters, San Francisco. There's so much good about Stanford. The only thing that's not good is the fact that like 5 people go to their games. But at the end of the day, it's a TV product. I mean, Nebraska fans can fill that stadium, so that's not an issue. But I personally, I would like to see them, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah,
they may end up in the Big 12. They may end up in this new Mountain West combo hybrid. I guess we'll find out.
You guys hit it. Stanford, they know what they're doing. They'll figure it out. And
if they don't, it's their own darn fault.
Well, yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, Tony, money's not an option for them. They want to do what they want to do, and they're going to figure something out. I don't think it's going to be going to the Mountain West. Maybe they go independent, but maybe that's the piece that's going to help get Notre Dame. We don't know that. We don't know what's going to happen with the ACC. Maybe Stanford would be paired up with somebody from the ACC that can break that grant of rights. We don't know. We didn't know that the Pac-12 would lose 6 teams in 9 days. Nobody saw that on the bingo card. So, but Stanford's a wild card.
And in fact, the presidents didn't see that on the bingo card when they woke up Friday morning.
So as we move towards signing day, there's going to be more clarity, but they have to make a decision about 2024 very quickly, especially if they're going to move the Big Ten.
Shots fired. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we're running. Oh, we do have a caller. AJ, nice to have you here.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. How you doing, AJ?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Wonderful.
Good.
Right on.
Well, sorry. I was just curious. After I believe the name was the offensive lineman Manesse Atete decommitted from USC and decided to commit to FSU. What's the word on Brandon Baker? Is USC looking at him, or are we going to see another California stud lineman just not look at USC and potentially not even commit?
I'm not going to say I have a lot of inside information, but everything I've heard, especially from, my biggest source is Chris Trevino and Gerard Martinez. And my understanding from everything I've heard from them is that, he had a brother that played defensive line at Oregon. And also you got to remember USC, they didn't say this is me piecing stuff together. USC doesn't throw money at freshmen, and if you're coming in wanting like a big bag, I'm not saying that's what Oregon's doing anyone. But it just appears that USC in the past has lost some of these bigger linemen to Miami, to Oregon late in the show because they are not investing. If you look at what they're doing, they're getting guys like Pregnon, these man mountains, these guys we know aren't developmental. That we're not taking a flyer on them. We're getting quality offensive linemen developed and bring them in. We do need offensive tackles. I'm not going to say that, but we have Page and others. I don't know, Rick. What are your thoughts on that? I would say this though, Baker. We keep saying this. Baker didn't even have USC in his top 8, 10, whatever. You know what I mean? He's so the fact that we're talking about him, he's not really a USC recruit. Of course, USC's recruiting them. He's in their backyard at Modern Day. But from what I understand, I don't think he ever visited USC. So I don't think he was ever really a serious USC recruit. Rick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, he's a legacy recruit for Oregon. He's not interested in USC for whatever reason, so don't look for Brandon Baker to miraculously come to USC. There's other guys, though. Stanford, there's a few guys that USC was in the mix for that committed to Stanford. So maybe USC makes a play and tries to re-recruit because of this situation with the Pac-12. Maybe they go after Tuanau. He's an offensive lineman out of Huntington Beach High School. And there was also Garcia. He's an offensive lineman that's out of Utah. So, and they've got some excellent recruits out of Stanford, but there's other opportunities. I know that there's discussion about Fox Crater out of Oregon, trying to flip him. And there'll be other recruits that'll be out there, but yeah, it's a fluid situation. We got till February, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, gotcha. Go on, sir.
Oh no, just over the years, one position. I mean, just the casual. I am not a recruiting expert, but over the years, watching recruiting. I mean, I've been a diehard fan of recruiting, and I'm kind of starting to pull away from it. One, because of the the NIL game and last minute switches and everything. I used to follow it like a religion. It was great when it was like February and you had the February signing day, but the early signing day kind of took some shine off it. And now really with the portal and not waiting and sitting out for the transfers, it just seems like, of course, high school recruiting is important, but the one position over the years I always noticed that usually just was hit or miss, especially for USC, was offensive line. I mean, we've really had some highly recruited guys that were highly recruited on offensive line over the years that just never panned out. But I do like when you get these guys coming in, from across the country and filling slots for USC. When we're just talking, I could bring up Pregnon because that guy is like massive. But when you bring in guys, or you bring guys down like Kingston, right? You can bring these ready-made guys that have proven in the college game that they're going to play. Yes, I want to get 5 stars from our backyard, but at the same time, if they're never really were going to come to SC, like Baker's brother played at Oregon, and it's going to take a little bit of time for Lincoln Riley and Henson to change that perception. I mean, Oregon has done a great job recruiting offensive linemen for quite a while now. That started with Cristobal, right? I mean, he was offensive line guy, and he kind of got that thing going. And it's probably going to take a little bit of time. These high school kids grew up, throwing up to 0, and they're still at 0. So they're going to do that, but it's going to take a little time for them to change the perception. What are your thoughts?
I do understand where you guys are coming from. However, going back to Brandon Baker, it makes me question Lincoln Riley's perspective on the offensive line when I guess Matt Rule at Nebraska cares about the offensive line more because apparently Baker is going to be taking an official visit over to Nebraska. And then another question I have is I understand this is the Alex Grinch defense where it's not so much of the defensive line in particular, not a huge size. He's not in favor of a bunch of size, so to speak, in terms of majority of the line being over 300 pounds. How do you think that's going to transfer to the Big Ten, where that's true ground and pound, shut up, and take a beating to the face in terms of a line of scrimmage? How do you see his defense translating to the Big Ten?
I got a question. Are you a USC fan?
I am, but it's just like I am
I'm
just
not attacking you. Have you been following what USC has done in the transfer portal?
Yes, I have, but Bear Alexander, that's one guy at 300 pounds, and then in terms of based on the roster, he probably based on the roster, there's only 3 guys over 300 pounds, whereas kind of seems like the top dogs in the Big Ten, they got guys over 300 pounds, and even in the SEC, there are guys that are over 300 pounds. So that's my concern right there.
Yeah, well, Rick has been one of the biggest proponents of the fact that he'd like to see some more big defensive linemen. Yeah, they're there, but I'm not sure what you can do in the 1 year that full class that they've had to do it. I'm sure that is a huge point of emphasis for them. I'm sure they're trying to pull in bigger 300-pound guys. But again, the way they're packing on weight on some of these guys, they're not the only 2 guys that'll have 300 pounds on them. So okay. It was a bit interesting that Lucas did drop. It seemed like he dropped a little bit of weight, but
yes,
we'll see what the real numbers are when they actually come out. Rick, any thoughts on the size?
Are we talking the offensive line or defensive line?
Defensive line.
Yeah, well, you saw an upgrade in year 2 with Bear Alexander. You got Kion Bars. You got Jamil Muhammad, and you got Anthony Lucas, right, from the transfer portal. You also have developmental players, Devin Tompkins, that we'll see what he's about at the rush end position, and you've got some freshmen that are coming in that are going to be developed. So I like the depth of the defensive line. Now they're smaller, they're faster guys, such as Solo, guys from last year, Tellini, and Stanley Tuafau, but it's just a different philosophy, and we'll see how that translates when they've upgraded the athleticism and the quality of player.
No, I mean, and I'm getting back to his point about the actual size of, and you're breaking this point at 300 pounds, which is true. I mean, weight and mass is an important thing, but it's also strength at that position. And it's also quickness at that position. I think that obviously they need to put some size on because you're going to face teams like Michigan, right, that are going to ground and pound you. You saw what happened to Ohio State. They just wore them down and they leaned on them. And then in the fourth quarter, the floodgates open. I get the concern. I think maybe we need to be concerned maybe next year if they're still looking as light as they are right now. But you do have to give a little bit of time to bring in some weight. I'm sure they are pulling in guys with size.
Okay, awesome. And then I got a couple more questions for you guys. So, with Eric Gentry gaining 15 pounds, do you think that 15 pounds will be a factor in terms of him actually finishing the season not injured? And second, because he has a lean frame at 6'6", right? And then second, to me, this is going to determine whether you guys understand football. USC arguably had the best, defense in terms of getting turnovers, but didn't do too well in terms of third down defense. Would you guys rather have that flip this season in a sense of, a top 5 third down defense with, mediocre or slightly above average or mediocre/average defense in terms of forcing turnovers? Because to me, the idea of, especially in the Pac-12 championship game, in terms of the last 2 games of the season, the idea of trying to force those turnovers, in a sense, forced and created missed tackles, correct?
Correct. And then you saw that a lot play out in that the conference championship game in Las Vegas. Guys were panicking. Guys were going for strips. They lost. They weren't breaking down. They weren't making technically sound tackles. You saw that in that one big play. They could have been stopped for a 4th down. Got to let it go. Of course, no one's hoping for turnovers, but you also have to realize that if you have a defense that is designed in order to make turnovers happen, turnovers are a part of the game. Do I think that we'd rather have a better turnover margin than third down? Of course not. You want your team to get the guys off the field, clearly, but it's not one or the other. The issue is are they going to be able to tighten up the tackles? The guys were in position to make tackles. There's a lot of blown tackles. And you're an SC fan, so look at that front 7. That front 7 is brand new. And speaking of the front 7, you're talking about Eric Gentry and the injury factor, putting on some weight. His injury was an ankle injury. It was a lower leg injury. I don't think it had to do with actually him having body mass or whatever. But at the linebacker position, and you obviously, it clearly helps you to stay healthier. Mass is mass, and if he's going to be taking the hits, then yeah, putting on some exercise is going to help him. But more than just keep him healthy, it's going to allow him to push the pile the correct direction instead of getting run over. There have been a couple of times, I think he's those long arms. He was a sound tackler when he was healthy. People forget that, how good he did at tackling earlier in the season. And people also forget, yes, he came back in the season. They came later on in the season after that injury in Utah, but he wasn't 100%. And his tackling sure looked like that. So across the board, yes, I agree with you. That's why they went out and they upgraded. Look at your starting front 7. How many in that starting front 7 were on the team last year or were starting last year?
Oh, sorry. Say that again. My apologies.
Well, take a look at the front 7 right now.
Mm-hmm.
How many of the projected starting front 7 were starters last year? Gotcha. And the funny thing is the starters are now some quality backup to these guys that be coming in.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. I understand.
Yeah, there were a lot of guys injured or playing injured last year. So keep that in mind.
Gotcha. Well, thank you guys so much then.
Thanks, AJ.
Well, I think that Tony took off because we're actually out an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you guys all so much for being here. Again, we're only 3 short weeks away from the season starting. And I don't know what to say. I am bullish on this defense. I think that we talked about the versatility and depth. It's clear that in some positions, Rick, again, you've been a huge proponent of this. They need to get bigger across the front. I mean, that's just a given moving to the Big Ten. But they are making those strides. I think the portal will be a viable source for that. Rick, anything on the defensive comments that he had?
Well, I think part of it last year, we gave up so many long runs that we didn't even get to a third down because they were converting first and second downs. But yeah, obviously I would rather have the defense get off the field. So we want to put the offense in third and long situations. That's the best for your defense. That comes with tackling, improving your tackling, first down, putting them, getting them on incomplete passes or short runs, setting up a long second down, a long third down. Part of that is having the personnel, having the athleticism, having the depth. And we've got that this year. And so now we'll get to see, can these guys tackle? Because, that's the key. We can have all the depth in the world, but they still don't know how to tackle. That's not going to help us. But I would rather get them off the field than be leading or the top 10 in turnover margin. So it's all
And-
about third and long and getting off the field.
And I want to say this because I heard a lot of this is turnover luck, because of course there is some luck, right? When you see but when you cause turnovers, like when you're putting your helmet on the ball, when you're stripping a ball, when you have a freak, we'll talk about Gentry again. You got a 6'7" guy now. I think he's 6'7" guy in the middle. Do you know what kind of problems that causes in passing lanes for a quarterback? It changes the complete trajectory of the throw. And I saw at least 3 occasions where he either tipped it or caused the quarterback to change his throw that led directly to interceptions. So obviously you want sound defense. I'm not sure if that was even a serious question. Of course you want to see that third down conversion rate to decrease. But the problem with the whole thing is you're trying to separate the two things. What's great about Grinch's defense, and this is the reason why, by the way, guys like Urban Meyer and Mike Leach and Lincoln Riley have hired him. I would assume 3 guys that know more football than anyone's listening to this, is because of his innovative and his ability to create those turnovers. There's this rip that Oklahoma says the speed defense doesn't work, etc. We're going to see if it works in Southern California for the USC Trojans with our athletes. And anyone that's making predictions at this point, go right ahead. I'm bullish on it, although I am at the point I'll believe it when I see it. And I think they have the pieces they need. Rick?
Are we gonna do we handle Washington and Oregon to the Big Ten when we were talking with Big Ten Ted, or did you want to touch upon that? I'm seeing it on the rundown here.
Yeah, no, I went back to the depth and versatility. So, I mean, we did cover it. Unless you want to go into more detail about the tweet, if you want to do that, we can cover that stuff too, or we could, just like we're not getting any calls, so we just call it a day.
Well, why don't we do that? I mean, we were going to have Fight on Rusty on the show, and unfortunately, he had some complications and couldn't join us. But Rusty is a inspiration, and so I threw out a tweet earlier this evening. You can follow me at LBC Trojan, but it's kind of an inside joke between Tony, myself, and Tim. Any of you remember that movie in the early 90s, A Few Good Men, with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise, Kevin Pollak, and Pollak was Lieutenant Weinberg and Private Santiago. And Jack Nicholson was Colonel Jessup, and he ordered the code red. And so this week, or actually last June, USC ordered the code red by leaving the Pac-12. And on Friday, Oregon and Washington, aka Lieutenant Weinberg, they also went to the Big Ten, and I'm calling them Big Ten pledges because they went for 50%. So they're not going to get a full share until 2030. So they are in the Big Ten, but they're Big Ten pledges because they're making less money. And then poor Private Santiago. Colonel Jessup didn't even know who the hell he was. And honestly, we didn't know who Colorado was. We didn't know who Arizona was. Arizona was in the conference for 45 years, never made a Rose Bowl. Colorado had the worst record in the Pac-12 after being a 500 team for the first 12 years in the Big 12. So adios, Colorado. ASU and Michael Crow, you dirty dog. You were crying thinking about on Thursday night of having to go to the Big 12. Well, your fate is sealed. You've won one Rose Bowl, and Utah, you've been in the conference for 15 minutes, and yes, you have that. You beat USC 2 times last year, and you went to 2 consecutive Rose Bowls and lost. Congratulations. Now you get stuck in Utah with your favorite redheaded stepchild brother, BYU. Have fun in that one. So those 4 teams, hey, they just got shipped to a truck stop somewhere between Waco and Stillwater. Have fun in the Big 12, guys.
Yeah, they sure. There's a thing about the Pac-12. I am sad to see it go. There was always a lot of chatter about how irrelevant USC was, which was kind of interesting. We got it from all the fan bases, and I'll say it again. USC was irrelevant until we were relevant. I'm sorry to hear. Again, my heart goes out to the programs like Oregon State and Washington State, which are 2 of the only programs to beat those Pete Carroll teams. It wasn't the Big Ten teams, and it wasn't a lot of the powers around the rest of the country. It certainly wasn't the SEC beating Pete Carroll. It was the small guys that would show up and beat up and catch USC when they were overlooking them. The Beavs and the Cougars did that all the time. And so that's the part I feel sorry about. I'm hoping that they get some kind of landing spot later on. But you guys, it's been a great show. Thank you so much. 145 of you guys still out there. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be back next Sunday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. Until then, that's Rick. I'm Tim. And here's what I'm ready, guys. Fight on.